Hello and welcome back to Serendipity Intended. My name is Tracy Ann and I am so glad that you are here. It is time for another prompt in the Junk Journal July 2026 challenge. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. I don't have a ton of time today, so I'm going to do something that hopefully I can get through pretty quickly. Let's take a look at the prompt list here. This prompt or this challenge is sponsored by Creativity and Coffee, and we are on day 15, so essentially halfway through. And the prompt for today is shape. I decided to play with some shapes, but not necessarily exactly geometric, because that's just not my vibe. Let me find the page that I've set aside and I'll explain what I mean. One of the nice things about being at kind of the midway point of a prompt is that you can look back over the pages that you've already done, and it's a little bit like a stroll down memory lane. So the last page that I did yesterday was this one, day 14, gratitude. And after I did it, I was just kind of flipping around, and I decided that I didn't like all of this space down here when I flipped this page. So I had this in my stash, in my little tray of things to maybe use on the journal or in the journal. And I thought this blue kind of worked nicely with this blue. So I just tipped in this additional page. I like the quote, and it also gives me an additional place to do some journaling or add a photograph if I decide to do that down the road. But this is the page that I am going to use for this prompt. And I think it's kind of fun because the stitching from the pocket that I put in yesterday's page shows through to the back. And so that's, if I don't cover it, that will be part of the page. And I kind of like it there, and I think I'm going to go with that. One thing that I did notice was that the paper that I glued down is starting to come up a little bit here off of the page that I adhered it to, and you can see a little bit of a gap between the two pages, and I'm not super fond of that. So I'm going to take a piece of this paper, which I also used on this page, and I'm going to use that to kind of bridge between the two and hide this just a tiny bit. So in order to do that real quick, I'm just going to grab one of my old catalogs that I use for glue mat and my Yoo-Hoo stick, and I'm going to put a liberal amount of glue on. Now, I don't always use a ton of glue because it's not usually necessary, but I do find that it makes the paper a little more flexible. And in this case, because I'm putting it into the seam, I actually want it to be flexible. So I bend it like this and then kind of run my fingers in that seam to sort of get it in there so that it doesn't pop up, and that'll also strengthen the hinge. So with that in place, and we may or may not be able to see all of it or any of it except for this little bit once we do the page, and I'm honestly okay with that. So I did pick out this image because of the prompt of shape. I love florals, I love botanicals. I tend to do a lot of journaling with them, and so I wanted to include them, and I loved the shape, the sort of ball shape of the flower. I think it's really interesting how even though we think of geometrics as being sort of a man-made thing, nature really is filled with geometry, and I thought the circle ball shape of these flowers were super fun and that they fit in with the theme. And so This is going to be my focal point, but I think the colors here are more than a little bit washed out. So what I am going to do is I'm going to use my colored pencils to kind of brighten things up a little bit on here, and then I'll worry about the page once I've got that done. Now, I've done this before in videos where I take colored pencils and I go over a digital to brighten it up a bit. If you're really heavy-handed, you can see the drawing. If you're a little bit lighter with your hand, it adds to the color that you have here. It creates just a bit of texture, and it makes it look hand done or handmade, all of which I think is kind of fun. So I'm going to, oops, I need to grab the green as well. I'm going to do that with these flowers, and I'm going to start with the green. So let me zoom in just a little bit more so you can better see what I'm doing here. And I'm going to start with, so these are all Prismacolor pencils. I really like them. I like the way they feel a little bit creamy when they go on. I just like the way that it feels, and I really like the color that it gives. So this is a grass green, and I'm going to start with that just to show you. Let me grab a piece of paper. So the color looks like this. So it's definitely a little bit brighter than what this is, but I want to make the leaves a little more green and a little less yellow. So that's why I'm going with this color. And as you'll see, I'm just going super, super light over the leaf. And what that is doing is it's mixing with the color underneath, the printed color underneath, and it's changing it just slightly. So you can see here, I colored half of this leaf, and you can already see this is the side I colored, this is the side that's still uncolored, and it changes it just ever so much. And I'm literally not doing anything artistic. I'm just coloring in sort of a circular motion so that the lines aren't as obvious. And that's all that I'm doing. But that color, super lightly, is going on top of what's underneath, and it is creating something that is a little different than the original. All right, so just go through with this first color and catch all of the leaves. Now on some of the leaves where the color is a little bit more muted, the color of the actual pencil shows up a little bit more. On the leaves where it's not quite as muted, it doesn't show up as much. Like this leaf is pretty gray. But again, that's okay, because the digital that I got this from, the artist put in those variations because that's what we see in nature. And I'm not trying to change those variations. I'm just trying to change the overall tint. So you can see that this already is looking a little bit darker than it did before. Now I'm going to take this one. This is a dark green. And I'm going to go over not the whole thing, just the areas where there is a little bit more darkness, and just add that a little bit more. And then on some of these leaves that are just a little bit bleh, like this one in particular, I'm going to go in and give it a little bit more texture. And I do this just so that there's more than one color on top. I feel like that makes it blend a little bit more. And there. So it feels a little bit more hand-drawn. The color is a little bit more pronounced. And now I'm going to do the yellow that's in these flowers and also this yellow flower. And I'm going to start with the smaller flowers with this yellow. This is a canary yellow. And again, just as though I were actually doing this just to make the color a little bit more vibrant than it was before. And then I'm going to take this yellow ochre and add just a teeny bit to both of those, just again for a little bit of texture and definition. And then I'm going to go over this entire flower with the yellow ochre. Now the yellow is pretty saturated. It's the one color that I feel like did print really well, and so I don't think it needs as much help, but I don't want it to be the only thing that doesn't have pencil on it, so I went ahead and added it, and it pops just a teeny bit more. I also think, I didn't pull this out, but I also think I'm gonna grab this orange color. This is a pale vermilion. So this is what it looks like if I just use it by itself. And I'm gonna go in just a little bit in some of the areas where I can see a little bit of orange in the flower, just to help it pop a tiny bit. And yeah, that works well for me. I'm happy with that. Okay, and now these two flowers. This one has a slightly pink tinge to it. This one is definitely more purple. I want them to still feel mostly purple, but I am going to use two different colors for the underneath color. So for this one, I'm going to use this pink. And again, I'm just going to go in super lightly just to give the suggestion of some additional color. And then I'm going to do that same thing, layering the colors with these other two flowers as well. So definitely significantly brighter than it was before. And then I'm going to go over it with my Micron 005, just in some specific places, just to give a little bit more texture and depth and definition to the flower, mostly around the outside, but then sporadically on the inside, just to, again, make it look a little bit more like I did it, as opposed to coloring a digital print. There's nothing wrong, I don't think, with using a digital as is. And the people who make the digitals create them so that people can use them in their work however they choose. I just, and a lot of times I do use the digital exactly the way that it is. I just find that if I can do something to it, whether it's a little bit of pen work or enhancing the color with colored pencils, what those kinds of things, it makes it, for me, a little bit more personal and you know, a little bit more mine than perhaps it would have otherwise. So you can see I'm not worrying about hitting every single line on here. It's really more about just adding some strokes throughout, because I think that black gives it just a little bit more depth and texture. All right, the last thing that I want to do before I start gluing things down is I want to cut out some of the space in between, just to give this a little bit more of the illusion of being an actual flower. So I'm gonna, it's already mostly fussy cut, but I'm gonna go around and fussy cut just in some places to create a little bit of texture. So that instead of being a smooth cut line, there's a little bit more movement that matches the outside edge of the flower. Just because again, I think it gives it a little bit more texture, a little bit more depth, and it makes it seem less like just something that I cut out and glued on a page, and like something that is part of the page. All right, so that works. And then maybe down here, the stem, just create a little bit more, get rid of some of the negative space around the stem, so that then, yeah, it stands out a little bit more. Maybe up here, got a lot of extra negative space that I don't particularly need. Maybe here. And then the last two places that I'm gonna try and cut are in here in the middle. Let's see if I can do this without making a huge mess. Maybe I'll bend it and snip it. Yeah, there we go. I was gonna go in here, but I don't think I can do it with these scissors. So let me clean this up real quick, and then I'm gonna grab my little mini mat and my X-Acto, and I'm gonna trim this out using my X-Acto because it's a lot more precise than the scissors, and that little space cut out. Okay, And there we go. So I think you can see here, there's just some places like here and here, down here and right there, where now you can see behind, and I think it gives everything a little bit more depth. Right. So let's move these colored pencils out of the way and bring back our page. And I also need to zoom back out a bit. So I'm thinking, I was originally planning to put this down here so that it looked like it was growing out of the bottom of the page, and I still might, but I was also thinking it might be interesting to sort of tilt it up here, because I found this yellow memo thing. It's yellow on one side and it's cream on the other, but I thought that it might make an interesting shape to add behind here, just to add a little bit more of that sort of shape idea. And so I was thinking maybe to put it like that and then build that there. So that's sort of interesting. That's a maybe. I guess I could also do it up here. I also kind of like that going over the edge a bit to the other page. That's kind of fun. So maybe there, and I had grabbed this because it was pink and it also has this circle shape on it. But now I'm not so sure that I like it with my new colors, so I'll set that aside. I did also grab, I've been using this page in the journal, but I thought this might be a nice way to kind of bridge between the flower and here. And yeah, I like that. I think maybe I need a label or something to come over here. So let me grab my label bin and we'll look and see what's there. So I went through my label stash and I pulled out some labels. Some of them are printed and some of them are not, just to sort of play with. So the first set that I grabbed were some shapes that, have little inserts on the inside, because I thought that could be interesting to sort of tuck in like that. And the round, I think, is kind of fun because it sort of echoes that shape. The brown's okay. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. That is too pale. Oh, but here is another pink that's a little bit brighter. No, I don't like the pink. I was sure that I would. I'm not even going to do this other pink. And then there's this blue, which is a completely different color. And I like the blue. I'm not sure that I like this blue with the other things that are going on the page. I wish I had more of a teal color blue. I also think this one's way too big. Oh, is this more tealy looking? Not really. The shape is kind of interesting. That's also maybe, what about this one? No, I really don't like that blue with this. Then there's this weird sort of browny yellow color. No, not gonna work. And, I was thinking originally that putting a shape that matched these colors would be the answer, but I think it's a contrast that I need. There's this kind of weird orange shape. I do like the orange. I think this is supposed to be like a rub off. I do like the orange, even though it's kind of similar to the yellow. And the silver is sort of interesting. Again, not in love with it, but also still a possibility. So in addition to these colored shapes that I've now only got 3 of, I also grabbed some of these others just to see what they would look like. So, maybe putting in just a label. And I think I need something else, but I do kind of like that. Wonder if I think it would be more interesting if I put it right side up. Yeah, I do think it's more interesting that way. So that's a possibility. It's kind of grayish, which sort of connects to the background, which I kind of like. So again, a possibility. Don't think I actually like the floral. No, that's too much of the same thing. Oh, the green is kind of interesting. I hadn't thought about green, but I do like that. I like that a lot. So far, I like that the best of everything. I wonder, because I do think that lettering is fun, what would happen if we did that? Okay, so far that is the option. But then I also have these number labels, and that's, I think, too dark. It doesn't make sense. I just don't think that makes sense with everything else that's here. What would happen if I did one here and one here and did the labels that? No. I do like the 87 though. I don't know why. When I do that, then that makes this feel empty, like there's something else that should be going on there. So I'm thinking that's a no. All right. Of all of the options, I think I find this one the most interesting. I think I'm gonna go this route. So I'm just gonna kind of figure out where I want things. So I'm gonna see, I think this is the very bottom. Yeah, so I put a registration mark for that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and glue everything down, and then we'll see what else I need to do. Before I glue this flower down, I just want to be sure that there isn't anything else that I want to do behind it. So I do need to make sure, oh, you know what I just realized? I put this down and I can't lift this up now. I need to make just the slightest cut in that paper so I can lift this page up. There we go. Okay, so I'm thinking this will sit like so that I can still open the page. Yeah, so it's going to have to sit like that. And I think I need something else right here. Maybe just a little bit of washi. So let me grab just a tiny sliver of this washi and just put it underneath. Add a little bit of texture, and then where is my stamp? I'll be right back. I find that using stamps in the background to create texture is a really great way to add just a little bit of extra interest to a page. And one of my favorite ways to do that is with these postage stamps, so like postage marks. Especially this, because you can layer them and create sort of that postage look, or you can just use the lines by itself to add just the slightest bit of extra interest. And I think I'm going to do that before I glue this down, just to create a little bit more depth with the background. So I'm going to use an archival ink here, in part because I'm going to stamp on the washi, and sometimes that can get a little smeary, and this ink bleeds a little less. It'll work a little better. So you can see it's not super noticeable, but it is there a little bit. And I'm going to do the same thing up here. And then I will use my watermark as well. And this is also fun because it's round. So keeping with that idea of shapes, and particularly this shape of a circle or a ball, which is what I'm featuring on this page. And yeah, let me get these out of the way because I think I am not going to use them. So yeah, so it's just there in the background, but it adds just a little bit of something else that wasn't there before. And I think I'm ready to go ahead and glue this down. Let me grab a glue mat, otherwise known as a catalog, that I don't want or no longer need. And I probably should have made some registration marks before I picked that up. I'll have to be careful when I glue it down. Make sure I get the stems because they're super thin and they're going to be sitting right near the fold. So I want it low enough that I can see my watermark, but I also need to make sure that I avoid this page, so I can turn the page, and we'll glue that down. Okay, so that is coming along nicely. And then the last thing that I want to do is add, just with my Sketch and Wash, again, just going to add a teeny bit of shading, not only around the flower, but also around this one label in particular. So, and I just scribble, and then I use my water brush to activate it and move it around a little bit and blend it. There we go. then I think the last thing I'm gonna do is grab my Distress crayon, and just like I gave a little bit of shadow here with the gray, I'm gonna go around just up here where the gray paper is and just do the slightest little bit of outlining there to give it a little bit of a pop from behind. And just the slightest bit. And I think I'm good with my shapes. So I started out with just thinking of the shapes of the flowers, that sort of ball shape, but I've managed to work in another circle here and 3 different sort of rectangle shapes, and all of that kind of makes me really happy. The last thing that I need to do is grab myself a label to put on my page. And here we go. So shape, and as usual I have to figure out where to put it, and I also peeled that up more than I intended to. Glue that back down again. All right, so I do think I'm just gonna tuck it down here and just let it be at the bottom. So I'll pull the backing off. I am gonna grab my scissors and trim off a little bit of the extra black that's on either side, so that that black shape isn't quite as prominent. And actually, I think I'm gonna put it here instead of in the corner. It feels a little less conspicuous there on the background than it does over here. All right, so I've got a little spot to do some journaling. I have added my shapes to my page, and that brings me to the end of another prompt. I had a good time. This is really not what I thought I was going to end up with, but I'm overall pretty happy with the results. Thank you so much for joining me. If you made a similar page, I'd love to see what you created. Drop a picture of your page in the comments below. And until next time, I sincerely hope that you make a great day. Goodbye.